Welcome to AIDS Vision. I'm your volunteer host, Allison Arngrim. And today on AIDS Vision, we're going to talk about surviving AIDS. I have two people with me who've had AIDS for a very long time, and they are more than surviving. And I want to introduce to you two people. First of all, I want to introduce Bill, who you saw earlier in the video. And we also have with us the Reverend Stephen Pieters of MCC, who's been on our show before and is back again to talk about being a long-term survivor. Well, welcome yet again to AIDS Vision. What is this, your fourth time?
Third, I think.
Third?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to talk to Bill first. This is your first time on AIDS Vision, and we had your opening tape there. That was in 1985.
Yes, October 1985.
And that was literally 2 days after you found out you had AIDS?
Yeah, I think so. It was filmed on a Wednesday, and actually I was diagnosed Monday at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Now, what did they tell you when you were diagnosed? What did they tell you that you had? How did they
Well,
practice it?
Allison, it was very interesting. Before that Monday, I had, I think it was about 6 or 10 weeks, had a reoccurring bout of cancer come up. And it seemed it was a cross between Hodgkin's and lymphoma. So the concern was that it was spreading rather rapidly. And we were dealing with that, and I was mentally dealing with that as to what did I want to do. I wasn't sure whether I wanted to go under surgery again. I wasn't sure whether I wanted to take the typical standard medical treatment for it. And just as I was coming to grips with the decision to basically go through a holistic approach, I had not been feeling well. Actually, the week previous to that, I had undergone one chemotherapy treatment, just so that I could know for myself why I was against doing chemotherapy, meaning the side effects, the feeling sick, the throwing up. Yes, because I had elected to say absolutely I would not do chemotherapy, and then in retrospect I thought, well, maybe I should at least find out why I'm saying no. And I had the treatment on a Friday, and of course I spent the entire weekend being very ill. So ill that I thought something was a little strange. So that's what prompted me to go into the doctor. And he ran some tests and said, come back in about a week. I did that, and when I went back into him, it was very strange, or it was very interesting that I felt that he was going to tell me that afternoon that I had AIDS. I mean, it was just a feeling I had. And I'd been with this particular physician for a very long time, and he's one of those black and white. The bedside manner isn't the greatest, but he tells you what you need to know and doesn't mince words. So anyway, when he walked into the room, he had a new demeanor. I mean, this very compassionate tone, and almost like a man I didn't know.
He was a little too nice.
A little too nice, and I knew something was up. And what he said to me was, he said, well, Bill, I've got some good news and bad news. And the good news is we found out what's wrong with you. And that is that you have 2 types of amoeba. One we can treat, and one we can just, at best, control. And he said the second, which is cryptosporidium, is an AIDS opportunistic infection. And he sort of sat down across from the examining table, and he said, ask me whatever questions you need to ask. We'll sit here as long as you need to sit here. Of course, I was in a mild state of shock. I thought, well, this is very interesting, you know. I mean, not only do I have this case of strange kind of cancer, but I'm also now faced with what at that time everybody thought of and felt very religiously as a life-threatening illness. And I don't mean to soft pedal it, it is, but I just left the office very numb, and that particular evening, unbeknownst to me, was the airing of Early Frost.
Oh, you went home and you saw that the first night?
Yes, I ended up seeing it. It's true, but I didn't know it. I finally, about 9 o'clock, about 5 to 9 actually, in the evening, I called a very good friend of mine because I was coming out of my skull. I needed to talk to somebody. I needed to have some kind of communication, you know?
Sure.
And I called Ed up, and he said, well, why don't you come over? I'm watching this very interesting movie. So I went over to his house, and of course, there it was. I sat there, I talked to him briefly, and then I watched the movie. And I, to this day, feel that if I had not watched the film, I would never have taken the immediate action that I did in the way that I did it. I thought the film was enlightening. I thought it was done very well, except what I didn't like about it was the way the AIDS person was being treated. And I said, I will not allow that to be done to me. So on Tuesday morning, after a night of boo-hooing and crying and sobbing, and I called my parents and told my mother immediately.
You told your mother that day?
Mm-hmm, I did. I felt like I needed as much close support as I could get. And I also didn't know whether I was going to be alive in 5 days or not.
How long did they tell you that they thought you were going to live?
Well, with regard to the AIDS situation, they didn't put a time frame on it. With regard to the cancer situation, they said at best 9 months. If I didn't undergo surgery and if I didn't undergo chemotherapy. They said I might get through 9 months. Now, this was prior to them telling me I had AIDS. So you can imagine, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking I might have 9 months to live. And then they throw this on top of it. I felt like, for the first couple days, why don't I just put myself in a can, put the lid on it, and say, forget it. You know, this is just too much to bear. But I woke up on a Tuesday, the Tuesday after that particular black day, as I call it. And I felt like I needed to take action. I felt like the decisions I had made regarding the treatment for cancer, which was totally holistic, if they would work for cancer, why wouldn't they work for AIDS? Why could I had nothing to lose and only something to gain, and this was my particular thought pattern at that time.
This is interesting because it's similar when you were diagnosed in 82. You were diagnosed with cancer as well, weren't you?
I was diagnosed with cancer in 84. Yeah, in 82 I was diagnosed as pre-AIDS and had hepatitis and CMV and a whole bunch of fungal infections, candidiasis, herpes, shingles, until finally leading up to the cancer diagnosis in April of 84.
And now, how long did they tell you had to live?
In April of 84 I was told I had 8 months. But
8 months?
I wouldn't live to see 1985. So, the cancer diagnosis was 2 kinds of cancer, Kaposi sarcoma and lymphoma. And they told me I was a walking time bomb. The cancers would take off at any time and kill me.
Now, you took fairly immediate action as well, but what was your immediate course of action when you were first told?
Well, when I was first told that I had pre-AIDS, I went home and cried a lot and just stayed in my house and closed the drapes.
That seems to be the all-around immediate reaction.
Had a very bad attitude. Felt real sorry for myself and was getting ready to die. Then when they told me I had the cancer, something snapped, and I really started taking charge of my own life, and I began reading about people who'd beaten cancers, and there was nothing written about people beating AIDS back in 84.
Right.
There were no long-term survivors back then, so I didn't have any evidence to believe it was possible. But I decided that if it was possible to beat cancers that used to be thought to be unbeatable, then I thought, well, hey, maybe I can beat AIDS too. And so I set out to exercise and study nutrition and vitamins and meditation and visualization and prayer and really exercising my faith in believing in God's healing power, believing in God's presence in my life and that God loved me and wanted me to be healthy and alive, which was exactly opposite what a lot of people were saying, especially back in 84. There was a lot of right-wing backlash, not that there isn't now, but AIDS is God's punishment. Well, I rejected that right away and said, no, AIDS, God didn't give me this. A virus did. God is with me.
I'm interested, too, in noticing that a lot of people don't break down right away. They're told that they have AIDS. They just stay in the state of shock. They go into denial, and they don't really get upset until further down the road. Do you think that the fact that both of you did go immediately to breaking down and crying, calling your friends so quickly, help speed up your ability to take action? Do you think that that was part of what is happening here?
I do.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. For me, it was a matter of getting the feelings out and experiencing the feelings and not stuffing them down. So everything that I've read
Right.
indicates that stuffing down your anger and your fear and that sort of thing and not expressing it is what causes cancer. So it was really important for me to get it out there. I remember the day I was diagnosed, I had a chaplain with me and I said, "I'm so scared," thinking she'd say, "Oh, don't be scared, you're okay, we're here with you." And she didn't. She said, "You're right to be scared, you have a lot to be scared of." And that kind of sent me off of this cliff. And I fell and fell and fell. Ah, you know. But I needed to do that. I needed to feel that fear and despair.
Not a time to white knuckle it. We're going to go to a PSA right now, and we'll be back.
You're forgetting something?
Oh, you mean this?
You know what I mean.
With this?
You haven't got a rubber, have you?
I hate that word.
I could think of an uglier word.
What do you think I've got, AIDS?
Well, you could.
Thanks a lot.
Or I could. And we wouldn't know.
Look, this doesn't feel right anymore.
You're leaving?
Yeah, somewhere in this town. There's got to be a drugstore that's still open.
Get out of here.
Thank you, and we're back with Bill and Steve. We were talking about your spiritual survival and talking with the chaplain. I mean, obviously you are a reverend and you even have your own pamphlet on, which you can show us now.
Yes, I have this pamphlet called Spiritual Strength for Survival, Finding Hope to be Fully Alive with HIV/AIDS, and it's based on a study of long-term survivors of AIDS that was done in 1987, connected to spiritual principles, and gives you a program for surviving and thriving, living with AIDS.
And they can get hold of that through MCC.
You can get hold of this through any MCC or through the fellowship offices at 464-5100, area code 213.
Now, Bill, what is your spiritual connection, if any? What have you found? What have you been doing?
Well, I found that I do have a spiritual connection. I choose to believe that whether it's God, whether it's a star, whether it's a planet or an entity, there is something out there that if you can connect with and make an association, you will gain guidance and strength that will help you get where you need to get or do what you want to do with yourself. I believe that whatever course of action you choose, you have to believe in it 150%. I don't think in this particular crisis 100% is going to work. I think you have to go beyond that and believe that whatever you're doing, that you totally believe in the effort that you're putting out, and I think you will gain the results. I was raised very religious, and over the course of years, I found that my ideas and my views changed greatly for my own personal reasons. And as the years went by, I simply found that for me, basically, a science of mind background and thought pattern is what really works for me. It seems very clear, it seems very, very simple. And once I decided to look at the things in my life that were unpleasant, the wrongs I had done to people, once I took them, looked at them, digested them, owned them, and said, yes, I really did this, instead of pushing them down and covering them up, then I could let them go. I could get rid of them. And once I got rid of all that garbage, what I choose to call garbage, I started to make room for healing.
And Steve, you being Metropolitan Community Church, you are a Christian reverend. A lot of people have used Christianity and found Christianity as almost an attack on a lot of people with AIDS at various times and found it to be debilitating to them from certain things they've been told. How do you use your Christianity and your faith, specifically in relation to AIDS?
Well, I think it's very important to remember that God is greater than AIDS, that God is still in the healing business. For me, coming from the Christian perspective, God is greater than the death of Jesus on the cross, which we know through our Easter faith, through the resurrection. And that means to me that God is greater than HIV or any other disease. Believing in God's love for me and believing that I'm a co-creator with God means that I can create the conditions for healing in my body. I don't just passively wait around for a miracle to happen. I work at strengthening my body and doing everything I can spiritually, emotionally, and physically to optimize the conditions of my body so that healing can happen. And fortunately it has. My cancers have been in complete remission for 6 years, well over 6 years now. I haven't had any HIV-related infection in well over 5 years.
Both of you repeatedly have used the word action, constant, immediate action, taking immediate action, going into action. Bill, what is the present state of your health? What treatments are you in now, if any?
I'm not in any.
You're not
As
in
a
thing.
matter of fact, I happen to be allergic to almost all the protocols to slow the virus down.
You can't even take any of this stuff.
No, I can't. I can't take anything. I've tried everything, and I just get violent reactions from all of it. So I feel like, you know, I'm on a wing and a prayer as far as...
It's important to note that there were long-term survivors of AIDS before AZT, DDI, or pentamidine, or Bactrim, or any of that.
And neither of you are on AZT
I don't
at this
take
point.
any HIV-related medication. I was on an antiviral drug in 1985, the first antiviral drug they tried against AIDS, a drug called Suramin, but that drug proved to be too toxic for further use against AIDS. So I don't take anything. It's not indicated. I'm well without
You're
it.
both working, you're both in as excellent health as most people would want to be.
Fully employed.
I think so, yes.
We're fine.
The last time I checked.
Now, how has this affected, I mean, the rest of your lives? You've talked about, you told your mother that day, you talked to your parents fairly rapidly.
Right,
How
day.
has your family, how do they deal with this, that they may, the expectation is, oh, I've been told that my son has cancer, has AIDS, all right, how long does he have? I have to prepare for death, and you're still here. How do they deal with this? How do they deal with you regularly?
Well, they bounced back and forth for a long time, not knowing what to feel. They went into very definite grief when I was diagnosed, and I remember my mother screaming and bursting into tears, and Dad just being very depressed for a long time afterwards. And then when I didn't die, and I didn't die, and I didn't die, they just kept wondering what's going on here. They're very happy that I got well, obviously, but they were very confused. My parents were one of the last ones to believe that I really was well. Even though they could see that I was well and they saw my doctor's reports, they still assumed that I was going to get sick any day
Was it
and
just
die.
too scary to like, for
It
them
was
to
too
hold that
scary
up?
to let go of. It was scary to believe in healing. It was scary to believe that I could really be well, because what if I got sick again? They'd have to go through all of that again.
Has your mother taken this?
Well, no, it's very interesting. As far as my parents are concerned, I firmly believe, right to this day, that they think it's a figment of my imagination.
That's an approach.
Yes, it really is. I think there's a very large part of them that lives in denial. But I don't know that that's accurate either, because they've been very positive about it. They firmly believed when I told them that I wasn't going to die, I didn't have anything to worry about, and that I would get better. That's how they think. My grandparents were that way very much about illness. I come from a very solid German, Dutch stock, and you know, we don't have time for illness. We just have to push on.
Isn't that interesting? I come from German Dutch stock too. Now, do you suppose that has a
Is this
genetically?
it? Should we call the AMA? Have we found the answer?
It could be. So, you know, they've never thought I was going to die. And it is something, though, that we don't talk about a lot. They prefer not to.
But I'm also hearing that you have very supportive environments. You're not around a lot of people who are saying, well, you're going to die now.
Oh.
You're around a lot of people who are supporting you in the belief that you're going to live.
Right.
Now, are you in a relationship now? What kind of relationships do you have? Are you sexually active? Do you have a lover? What is your love life like since long-term AIDS survivor? Who wants to go first?
Single. Single, yes, and I have an active sex life. Or as
Should we
active
run
as
a
I'd like
number
it
at the
to be.
bottom of the screen?
Sure. When in town, call. But no, it's been a struggle through the years because certainly back when I was really sick between 82 and 86, there were a lot of times when I just wasn't interested, whether I was physically debilitated or emotionally debilitated. I just wasn't interested. But since I've gotten better, I've noticed that there are a lot of gay men out there who are scared to death of having sex with somebody who's been diagnosed, even though we all should be having sex as if the other person has AIDS. When the reality is that the other person has been diagnosed with AIDS, something happens up here and they go, oh, I don't want anything
Run
to
into
do
people who practice unsafe sex with people who may be infected, but as long as they don't know, it's like it won't
Yes,
hurt them, but if they know, they can't?
Right, and that's very peculiar, and that leads to death, I'm afraid. That leads to infection, certainly. Fortunately, I have run into some men who do have the idea that safe sex is the right idea, and it's not like it was back in the 70s, certainly.
I'm in a relationship. I was in a relationship when I was diagnosed. I went through one relationship. My lover passed away, and it has been a number of years, prior to my going into the relationship I'm in now. Yes, I have been and usually am very sexually active. I practice safe sex, and I'm very happy right now. When I went into this relationship, my lover does think and wonder if I'm going to be around. It is a real concern to him. However, it does not hurt our day-to-day relationship. And when he needs to talk about it, we talk about it.
What would you want people to know who are watching now who have just been diagnosed? Quickly.
There is hope. There is hope. There is no reason to believe that AIDS is an automatic imminent death sentence. That is something that you hear in the media all the time, and it makes me so angry. I heard just this morning on the Today Show that AIDS is 100% uniformly fatal. Well, I'm alive. And I do not bow to that statistic. And indeed, if you look at the Center for Disease Control statistics, there is not a 100% death rate to AIDS, even from the earliest years. So there is hope. There's a lot you can do to support your life and to support your health when you have HIV and AIDS.
Well, I agree with Steve 100%. I mean, the only thing I'd add to that is just simply get off your butt, get on with your life.
Yeah.
Do whatever you need to do to make yourself a happy, whole, loving human being. Wherever you have to go, whatever you have to seek out, but just start doing it. Because the longer you don't, you're just losing time.
Engage in life, really get engaged in life. That's so important. Because some people just go and close the curtains and wait to die, and that's not the way to do it.
It's obviously not what either of you did.
No.
Thank you for coming on AIDS Vision. If you want information, you can contact AIDS Project Los Angeles. My name's Allison Arngrim. Thank you for watching AIDS Vision.